started sewing because when my children were little, they needed costumes. And when they handed me that first bill for $200, I thought to myself, I can do this myself. Hi, I'm Cookie Gaynor with cookiescreations.com, and today I'm going to show you several finishes that you'll find useful in making scarves. Scarves are the perfect accessory for your little black dress, your denim outfits. They're very versatile, as you can see by the examples I have behind me. My hardest decision was deciding what type of scarf would teach you the most skills. So we're going to do the yellow ruffled scarf. And we're going to first begin by using the narrow hemmer, and I'm going to lay this here so you can see how beautiful a hem you can get. And I'm actually going to do it on cotton voile because it's going to show up better for you to see. What I like to do first is fold my fabric into a tiny 1/8 of an inch and then 1/8 of an inch again, and I put in a straight pin. This is my method. It's a little different than what you may get with your package direction for your narrow hemmer, but I really like it. The narrow hemmer has a groove and it has a finger that holds the fabric in place as you sew. It's very important to let the narrow hemmer do all the work. So once I have this lined up with my straight pin, I use that as a steering wheel, I'll drop the foot, I'll lower, rolling the hand wheel towards me, and I will pull out the pin. I can actually lift up the foot a minute. Pull that pin out. All right. The next step is to take a few stitches, just a couple of stitches, to secure it. I have a piece of paper under here because rather than using a single whole needle plate, because often I switch between straight stitching and zigzag stitching, this keeps me from breaking the needle. So I'm going to now just roll this up a little bit, 1/8 of an inch again, and I'm just going to hold it up in the air and begin stitching. I set this to a straight stitch, middle, and it goes together rather quickly. The nice part about cotton voile is it drapes beautifully, and it's a really great fabric for you to learn how to create any of the scarves that you see behind me. It's beautiful. You should always audition your fabrics when you're selecting what you want to use for a particular scarf. And when I get towards the end, I'm going to let go, and it's actually going to feed through. The important thing is to just let the foot do the work. I'm going to cut the thread because it has that feature, and lift up the foot. And let's just go ahead and see how that looks. It couldn't be any prettier. It's the perfect, perfect hemline. And just think how much time you've saved by using this foot, the hammer, the narrow hammer, as opposed to you hand stitching. The next foot we're going to use is a ruffler. So with the ruffler foot, you have two areas you're going to look at. Over here, this section here goes over your needle bar. This area over here is what attaches to your machine. And then up here in the front, we have this little lever. I've set this to a number 6, which means that every 6th stitch, it's going to go ahead and make a pleat. So I'm going to put this onto the machine, over the needle bar, and down. Very easy to attach. I'm going to go back and take this piece of fabric we were just working on, and lift up the presser foot, and just line this up along the edge. And that's really what I'm doing. I'm lining it up along the edge here. And I will begin stitching. Got to lower that presser foot or it won't work. It makes beautiful pleats, and they'll be even. You can also use the traditional methods for ruffling, which is sewing 2 straight basting lines of stitches and gathering. But I thought this would be a nice foot to show, and it works beautifully on cotton voile. I'm going to rip off this paper so you can see what we've done. Of course, you would use matching thread as opposed to contrasting thread. I'm going to show you the next step. And for that, we're going to switch back, and we're going to go to a general purpose foot. I'll pull that out. I'm going to raise the presser foot, release the ruffler, put that back, grab my general purpose foot, And lower that machine. And we'll just line it up. Perfect. And what we would do for the next step is basically we're taking this ruffle and we have pinned it on, and then we would sew a straight stitch through it. So I would just line it up in here, bring it up, and begin stitching. And I would continue that along the length. Once you have that attached, it's going to look like this. It's just going to be stitched on. And the other thing I'm going to do is I've trimmed this to 1/8 of an inch, because the next thing I'm going to show you is a French seam. Once you've sewn this on, you have to remember it's always right sides together. So you put the ruffle on right sides together, stitch it, trim it down, flip it the other way, and again you will stitch across. Very easy to do, and you'll see. You can actually feel the seam as you're stitching, which is nice. Let's raise the presser foot. And you can actually see this is the front of the scarf, and here's the back, and it's encased in this wonderful seam, and therefore you're not going to have any kind of fraying, which is so important when you're working with scarves. And you can use this technique with anything, any type of fabric you have that shreds. You'll see it used a lot in baby wear too. The next step is over here. And this is me adding additional ruffles. So I'm actually adding a secondary ruffle, and I use the same process of creating the ruffle, putting in the hem over here on this ruffle, and then I've stitched this on, gathered, and now again I'm going to just simply stitch it straight across. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove these pins. And you can see now we have this ruffle attached to the top here. Do a little bit nicer job of stitching it across than I did, but it's attached here. And then what we do is we trim this away again. And I've gone ahead and trimmed it away over here so that you can see this. It's already trimmed for you. And now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and encase this seam. This seam too will be encased, and that's very simple to do too. Bring it back over to the machine. Line it up. All right. And we're just repeating that process, just stitching it across and grabbing that seam. And only I need to do it this way. When you're doing a French seam, remember it's always right sides together. And I almost didn't do it myself. That's the hardest part, is just remembering right sides together. So now this one is actually captured. You've got 2 finished layers. And the rest of this scarf is very simple. You're just going to put the roll hemmer back on and just finish the edge all the way around the scarf, and you have a completed scarf. That's all there is to it. So I hope you will enjoy this technique, that you will pull out your narrow roll hemmer, pull out your ruffler, and try making some of these French seams. There's not a scarf here on the table you cannot make using these techniques.